Hello everybody, welcome to the Qubes OS native app menu talk. We are going to talk a bit about how we are going to have a wonderful new app menu coming to 4.1-ish. And we are Nina Alter. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nina. I came into the Qubes project by working with the Secure Drop team on their workstation project, and I will speak to that a little bit in the presentation, but I've been working with Marta on this for the past year, and we're both really excited to bring this work to you.
And
Marta?
I am Marta Marczykowska-Górecka, and I've been working on Qubes for a while now, doing mostly Python GUI user interface stuff. And yes, working with Nina was on this is a great adventure because finally it's work based on some actual user research and not just, let's do it in some way. So first things first, what is the app menu we're talking about? This is the first thing that people usually interact with the system. The thing that shows when you click on the big Q button in the upper left or, well, lower left if you put it somewhere else. It can be in many places. And it has all the apps that you usually use with your system. It also can be called application launcher, app menu, global menu. It has very many names, which makes it sometimes difficult to talk about it. But you know, the thing you click when you want something new to be running, unless of course you are a command line power user like some of us. Currently, Qubes is using XFCE's default menu, slightly adapted to work better. Yeah, but the adaptations are slight, and yes. Why are we using it in the way it is now? Well, because reusing existing solutions was much faster than making something new. When Qubes was first coming to life, it was much easier to just take a menu that works instead of figuring out the entire thing from zero. You know, this is the, let's say, good enough principle. It works. It's not very pretty. It's probably not very usable, but it works. It has things, and people can hack a better solution if they really want, right? So this is the open source approach, which can often be a bit problematic. And also, most developers use command line tools. So the graphical user interfaces can be treated as an afterthought. We just like, it's okay. Nobody uses it anyway, right? And that's not true, as you will see later, but that's how people approached it. And of course, at the start, we didn't really have anybody experienced with UI, UX design, as open source projects often are, because open source projects are mostly built like, you know, programmer first, developers start working on something that feels like a good idea and not precisely a thing that looks like sellable, marketable, beautiful. Yes, which is often not very good. Our current menu problems are, as you can see on the slide, it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if somebody has a lot of programs in one VM or a lot of VMs, like some people have dozens of those, and it can be extremely difficult even to see what you want to see in the menu when the list is so long and with everything in the same color. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, okay. The default menu that we are using was also not designed for Qubes users. It was designed for single environment system with just one domain. One app is only once. So it's not exactly well suited to the kind of beautiful chaos that can a big Qubes system be. And also, another problem is that the information that we want to see when running a new app when running something. That, for example, is the VM I have the app in already running? Is it turned on? Do I have to wait? Do I have enough RAM? Will it be connected to the internet? Nothing is visible in the app menu. It can also be extremely confusing because, for example, if you click on disposable section in the menu, you get a new VM, disposable VM. That will never actually itself appear in the menu, but, you know, it's not exactly what you would call user-friendly. It's very quick to put together. This is the best thing I can say about the existing menu. So Nina came to our project, and how to say, she wasn't very happy with the current menu. And I think, Nina, you can tell us more about how this design tantrum happened.
Thank you, Marta. So Qubes blew me away when I first began to use it, and my first thought was, I want to get my parents using this. This is amazing. It's reasonably secure, finally. And then a couple of years ago, shortly after getting past that excitement of Qubes is amazing, I started to get into that headspace that many of us do of finding the nits and the problems. And I had a moment while using Qubes. That first point Marta spoke to about users being overwhelmed by today's app menu. When initiating a task in Qubes, I just wanted to be able to see all of the items in my Qubes app menu without having to read all of the prefixes, domain, service, template, disposable, before each Qubes name. So as many of us often do, I made a mock-up of what in that moment I considered to be an improvement on today's app menu to just quench my frustration. The colored padlocks as icons for each cube also kind of drove me nuts, as that felt like a confusing semiotic for a part of the UI that wasn't somehow locked or otherwise restricted. And after sharing this mock-up with my colleagues on the Secure Drop team, they encouraged me to propose this improvement to the Qubes team, which, having never worked on open source projects before, was kind of a light bulb moment for me. Like, I see an improvement opportunity with the product, and I don't have to, it's not intrusive or weird for me to share that with the team. Neat. So fast forward to 2020, when I began working with the team properly, and our first major survey of users happened, as well as funding to make my own work and Marta's development work on this project a reality. Some early nuggets from our first survey proved to be an important springboard from which we were able to launch into the app menu project. One being that only 6% of the first survey's 5,000 respondents reported that navigating their machine by the command line alone was desirable, which is kind of surprising to us because we were expecting most users to be developers. The command line is great. Well, they would like a usable GUI as well, evidently. In the free text comments at the end of that survey, many current and former users of Qubes also spoke to challenges maintaining memory and performance loads when using Qubes. Finally, the core team received an excellent reality check, learning that folks were on far more VMs simultaneously than forum, email, or GitHub communications alone had led them to believe. Marta wrote a fantastic write-up of findings from that survey. There's a link at the bottom of the screen, and I encourage folks to click on it and read that findings report for themselves. So moving forward from that early user research and into design discovery, what is the goal of design discovery for a user experience practitioner? It is to see what's already been done and to generate new ideas. Good ideas, bad ideas, extremely bad ideas. In my little design tantrum, I definitely devised a very plausible solution that a lot of people were really happy with. But it's important once a project is formalized and officially moving forward to kind of take a step back to see what already exists in the marketplace, what are users already accustomed to, and what already exists in the world that is terrible, and how can I make it worse? Because Marta will be building what I design, and that build is not going to be a trivial process, it is important to not just design an app menu that sucks less than what already exists, but to design something that best suits user needs, that can sustain, and that can grow. Interactive details can be refined with user testing once an alpha is launched. However, the broader experience needs to get explored with feedback solicited early on. To get the project in the right direction, then I composed a design brief. While I was doing some of my early discovery work, looking at other Linux distributions, looking at how Windows has evolved, yes, I even looked at Windows, I put together a design brief to communicate better with the full team and all interested collaborators. Basically a brain dump of everything I was thinking before investing any time into sketches or specific solution opportunities. When everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So what should be the priorities with this? What users do we wish to target? For those interested, a link to this document is also, or I should probably be pointing that direction, is also up above in the screen too. Additionally important in the design brief were design principles that we all agreed we wanted to make our target our new solution towards. Design principles are an important objective framework against which folks can deliver feedback throughout the design cycle and development iterations. If something isn't working, yet it's not captured in what this block of criteria define, then the design principles themselves need to get updated, and the updated criteria are applied against further iterations. It's design being inherently subjective work. Anytime we can bring objective criteria to that subjective work is good to do to improve and enhance collaboration. So now that we had, coming back to the user research side of things, now that we had a sizable pool of folks to reach back out to for user research, it was time to dig into stuff around navigating Qubes' UI in that research work and the central artifact, Qubes' app menu, that we were working on in a specific survey to those topics. There was a lot we did know from user forums, email lists, and discussion in GitHub issues, but what about the folks just quietly using Qubes day to day and not actively participating in our open communities? We also sought direct interviews with security trainers, and I reached out to end users I've been working with through the Secure Drop Workstation pilot project. At this point, measuring user sentiment to specific prototype features, their overall interaction models, and generalized user needs around navigating Qubes OS was the most valuable cache of feedback we could gather. Once an alpha build reflecting the outputs of that broad attitudinal research have been built into a proper app menu that users can install on their own machines to navigate their own machines with, then the deeper qualitative work can be endeavored one-on-one with users to refine that. So ask users stuff, prototype stuff, attitudinal feedback are first and foremost biggest priorities with this early work. So now I'm going to hand it back to Marta, and she's going to walk us through the prototypes that I built to present to users in attitudinal research specific to the app menu. Marta?
Thank you. Yes, we had two prototypes that were beautifully built by Nina, and because of the some limitations that we might all have experienced in showing people in person things, and like meeting with people and showing them on a screen what's going to happen. Nina put together two movies with how those prototypes are looking, and I will play you now the first Jackie prototype. Yep, and it's playing. And as you can see, this is a menu that kind of mimics the way XFCE's current menu is looking. This is a long scrolling menu with flying out submenus. But it also has search and favorites functionality, which is something that XFCE's menu doesn't have. because probably those are not as important if you have a limited number of apps. There are also tabs. This is a tab with all cubes. There's a tab with all apps, which looks a bit, which is also a bit more, a bit of a different approach than the current menu has. So you can look at things like cube first, so which cube I want, and then what app in it do I want, or you can look at things app first. So I want Firefox. Let's see, which Firefox do I want? Do I want a work Firefox? Do I want a personal Firefox? Do I want a super private Firefox? Also, this menu shows us memory and disk space used by each cube, which can be quite convenient because you can now say, oh, you can see now the memory and disk space, which is very nice if you are thinking, okay, can I actually run one more Firefox, or will everything just tell me, I'm sorry, no more RAM, which is a problem that probably all of us that ever used cubes have encountered more than once. The second prototype was, oh, sorry, this is not the button, this is the button. The second prototype was Bessie. And Bessie was created to mimic GNOME's Arc menu, which is still a bit different, but mimics, as Nina put it, the interaction patterns, which is a very nice way of putting it. As you can see, some concepts here are similar, but this menu is the main menu that you see is cube focused. You have cubes. Also, you can see which cubes are currently running. You can see disk space usage, memory usage. You can have cubes split into app, template, and service, because seeing them all in one big list can be a bit overwhelming, as we have seen. And you also have favorites and system settings, and this very nice always using option, which shows you just like the apps that you often use that you can run in different cubes. And yes, Bessie menu, as you can see, the Bessie and Jackie can be kind of have many similar points, but they have a bit different patterns of interacting with them. They can be convenient to a different person. You can see that, for example, Bessie doesn't have the what do you say, the search that was in front of Jackie. And the interesting thing is that while statistically most of the people that answered the survey preferred Bessie, a lot of text comments were full of worries and uncertainty and questions like, okay, yes, I like Bessie more, but I really like this and this part of Jackie. I really like this and this in Jackie. I really would hate if we used Bessie that had this and this and this. So all of those like pure statistical numbers had to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt and analyzed more subtly than just like, let's take this is going to be great because people voted for it. And now Nina can tell us what we learned from this survey and user answers. Nina.
Thank you, Marta. Yes, as Marta just pointed out, surveys are a wonderful tool, however, are very frequently misused by the business community, which, you know, lots of us like to wag our fingers at. Don't use that wrong. Surveys are great for attitudinal feedback and for quantitative feedback, right? but a lot of what we were looking for was qualitative with users with this. COVID was a small part of why we went with a survey for this app menu specific feedback, but honestly, we're also trying to learn from, like our little community of 30,000 users, like what will upset people the most, what will delight people the most, before Marta goes in and makes this gigantic commitment to actually build something. So 450 respondents in our attitudinal survey. Hopefully by the time this recording is playing at the conference, I will have a lovely report up on the Qubes website explaining in a report detailing out what we learned. But first and foremost, what we learned was search. People really, really, really want search in an app menu, which is great. Groups, people were elated to see groups, whether it was groups of apps or groups of cubes. Search and groups, however, are both very specific and detailed areas of functionality in and of themselves. So both of those groupings of functionality will be great once a menu already exists. Once Marta has built and coded this thing, it is live, and we've already gotten some user feedback on it. We plan to expand the menu, extend the menu, first and foremost to support search and as well groups. So we heard you guys loud and clear on that. Keyboard navigation, a lot more important to folks than we'd realized, so much so that I hadn't thought to solicit any questions about it. And yet, maybe even a third of all survey respondents were like, by the way, keyboard navigation, please, I really want keyboard navigation. So we've heard that too. And we're also considering that and building it into either our first or a very near-term iteration of the app menu. We also received 4 very detailed responses from visually impaired users responding to my question about how you guys, what is helpful for you guys to navigate your systems. So that detailed user feedback was excellent, and I really appreciated. All of us on the team really appreciated. Folks were very excited about the modern aesthetics, or what they saw as modern aesthetics in Bessie, however, reflecting a decades-old sort of pattern that I even mirror as a user. People were on one hand excited that modern aesthetics, woohoo, but wait a minute, if that's going to drag on the performance, I don't want them. So I'll accept ugly if ugly means it works fast. So we kind of all read those as the team behind it, like, yeah, we're not going to compromise performance, don't worry, we really want our computers to work well too. Dark and light mode support. I have been a Mac user for 30 years. I'm not a Linux person, so I'm still also adjusting my own head to the fact that everybody expects light and dark modes. That was also something that many people responded, and I'm sure my years of experience on Macs kind of showed in Bessie, in that clearly Bessie was neither light mode nor dark mode. And I'm really glad folks responded to that. So that was helpful for me too. Finally, Marta touched upon this idea of when she showcased either Bessie or Jackie, I think actually Jackie, that we built that prototype giving users the option to navigate by app or by cube, so that we wouldn't force users into the mental model of how it is today, where I need to go to my personal cube to open Firefox, which is not a natural behavior for most folks. Most folks think, I'd like to open Firefox, and I guess I should do that in a personal cube. So I wanted to reflect that opportunity in an app menu. That was responded to very favorably in statistics in pointed questions that I asked on that. However, in the free text comments, a lot of people flagged that as potentially being problematic. And the security trainers I spoke to also flagged that as being very problematic and working against Qubes' overall philosophy of supporting the needs of users to work in a compartmentalized fashion. So that was also a really helpful exercise for us to see that, yay, folks want this explored, but enough questions were raised to put that concept on hold. So we'll explore it in the future when, all that money falls from the sky and all that free time falls from the sky, which now brings us to Valentina. So Bessie and Jackie were both created specifically to be prototypes, with the expectation that we would synthesize the results and the outputs of what we learned from both Bessie and Jackie into a sort of third version that I would then hand off to Mark to build. And so that is what we did with Valentina, which Marta, you can navigate to in the presentation. So with Valentina, we also went with a more compact form factor akin to Bessie, seeking to mimic Cinnamon and Arc menu in GNOME as kind of foundational interaction model concepts. We have the bookmarks menu in the fully extended several releases after we've deployed this version. There will be search at the top. You can see if a cube has internet access or not. We're also hoping to incorporate some of what we call the domain menus functionality into the app menu. So that other Q menu in the upper left of your screen, we're hoping to incorporate the shutdown, restart, etc. functionality into that as well. And Martin, so I made this lovely mock-up, and now Marta is doing the very hard work of making it into reality. So Marta, I hand the mic back over to you to talk to us about implementation.
Yes, so there are very, very, very many problems with menus. The big problem is that every single desktop environment has its own idea what a menu is and how you should implement it, and what are requirements, what frameworks you should use. The XFCE, which is a Qube's default, uses menus that should be written in C because the XFCE bindings are only for C, and using GTK. And this would be a nightmare to do for Qubes because we don't have C bindings for all the Qubes libraries, and also we don't really like to use too much C. C is not easy to do securely, as everybody knows. And for a moment, I also had to think, okay, will we use GTK? Will we use Qt? Do we want to use something else? For historical reasons, also known as very many people worked on this project and had different opinions. Some parts of Qubes are written in GTK. Some parts of Qubes are written in Qt. Yes, it's exactly as painful as you think, writing this and testing this and making sure it all looks not terrible. But because of the XFCE requirements, we decided to stick with GTK. It's also a bit easier to style GTK to, for example, support light and dark modes without going completely nuts, which would happen probably if I had to do it in Qt. Big parts of Qube Manager are written in Qt, so I have some experience with wrangling it now. And we also decided that, like many Qubes apps, it will be written in Python, and then using a bit of magic and embedding a widget into a screen and using GTK's plug interface, we will actually embed it into XFCE, which is a bit of a pain, but it's definitely much easier than writing it from scratch using C, which would require much more work. And of course, there's a big problem of testing this because the new app menu is only going to be supported on Qubes 4.1 and newer, because it uses a lot of fancy new interesting API stuff that 4.1 provides, about which I think there was already a talk by Marta Marczykowska, so you may have already heard about it. And so I had problems with testing it because, as probably most of you know, 4.1 is arriving soon. The beta version has already arrived, but still it's a beta, so it can be a bit interesting to work with. So testing is even harder than the normal Qubes testing stuff. Currently, I'm working on making the something that works mostly like a menu. As you can see, we have a beautiful, the first version that you can see has a beautiful button called button and only one color. But currently we are slowly getting to something that looks more and more like a menu. There are only some interesting problems with CSS, with making sure this works, and I have not yet started on the making absolutely sure XFCE treats it as a native menu part, but I think it's going to be okay. Well, at least it's going to be interesting. Thanks everyone for listening to us, and that would be all from us, and we'll be available in the Q&A session in a couple of seconds. Bye!